Matthew 5:43. Ekusate hoti erethe agapeses ton plesiansu kai miseses ton ekthronsu. This is the sixth antithesis in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says, "You've heard that it was said, but now I say to you." Let's translate it. You all heard that it was said, "You shall love your neighbor, and you shall hate your enemy." ... And we don't have any trouble finding the command to love your neighbor. For example, Leviticus 19:18 in the Old Testament. Nowhere do we find the command for people to hate their enemy. And this is a reminder that Jesus is not only properly interpreting the Old Testament here, but he's interpreting and commenting on the way that the Old Testament had been misunderstood and misappropriated by his contemporaries. We have two future forms here, don't we? Agapeses and miseses. We recognize that's from the verb agapao, the first form there. The second form from the verb miseo. As we write out those verbs, we're reminded, oh, those are contract verbs, where the last letter of the stem is an alpha, epsilon, or omicron. And when we have a sigma or kappa or something come in, we expect those contract vowels to lengthen as they did right there. The sigma is the sign of the future, no augment. It's definitely not an aorist. Both of these are parsed as future, active, indicative, second person singular. They're imperatival futures, right? As we often find imperatival futures in the Old Testament. You shall love, often in English translated with shall, perhaps having a bit more of an imperatival sense. You shall love your neighbor. The word plesion is an adverb meaning near, but it's used substantively. Notice the article there. It's substantizing or nominalizing the adverb, used with the article to mean a nearby one, a neighbor. You shall love your neighbor. You shall hate your enemy. Right? Jesus is commenting on this way of understanding one's relationship with enemies and outsiders. We've parsed this before, but let's practice it again. Erethe, by now you should be able to recognize that as a super irregular form of lego. Yes, originally from a different root, of course. This is an aorist passive indicative, third person singular. It was said. Finally, this initial form, hopefully by now you're recognizing that capital eta. We've reminded you several times when we run into these that the capital eta looks like that, right? If it were lowercase, it would look like this. So this is an aorist active indicative, second person plural. Notice the lengthened initial vowel of akuo, the verb for hearing here, and we notice the sigma alpha. So it's going to be an aorist. Y'all heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and you shall hate your enemy.